Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sober Grind on this lovely Tuesday afternoon. I'm Pej, and I'm with my lovely co-host,
Austin.
Austin what?
Welcome back. Austin Armstrong.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we have our wonderful guest today. Her name is Julie-Ann, and she's an LMFT. She just finished everything.
I did. Yeah, I finally got LMFT licensing, which, if anybody knows the process, it is really long.
Round of applause for Julie-Ann. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Yay! So now what?
So now I am in a group private practice in Long Beach and Torrance.
Okay.
I've been waiting for 1 2/3 years to get into this practice because they had to take me when I was fully licensed.
Okay.
So yeah. So
exciting.
It is very exciting, yes. So I specialize in working with people because they had to take me when I was fully licensed.
Okay.
And so my issues. Yeah. So,
So exciting.
See, it is very exciting, yes. So I specialize in working with people because they had to take me when I was fully licensed.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
So,
Youngsters, oldsters,
it is very exciting, yes.
adolescents, all
So
that.
I specialize
Well, that's
in
amazing, and
working
it's so happy to
with
have
people
you
who
on
had to
here.
take me
And it's a perfect segue into the topic of today, which is the opioid epidemic, USA versus Europe, and where this epidemic really came from in the first place. Julie-Ann, do you want to kind of jump in and start? What's your opinion on where the epidemic came from?
Well, I'm going to backtrack just a little
Sure.
bit. Actually, I am finishing up my doctorate, and my
Oh,
dissertation is on heroin and opioid addiction.
So you've been studying this stuff.
I have really been studying
Good.
this stuff. I'm doing what's called a meta-analysis, which is taking articles and newspaper articles and going into government websites and really, really digging into this
Right.
issue.
Compiling the actual facts.
Yes, it's very, very extensive. I have paperwork all over the place, and I'm very old school. I need paper so I can do the outlining.
Good.
But what happened is that I was doing rehab work for a good 3 years. Started with Elite Care, which is now Beginnings Treatment Center, and I was really interested in working with people with heroin and opioid issues.
Okay.
Because it's becoming more extensive. I
Right.
was very shocked as to how many clients I was working with that had that issue versus like alcoholism or other addiction issues.
Yes.
And I do EMDR work,
Okay, great.
which is the deep trauma work.
And what does EMDR stand for?
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Now that's a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
Say that 10 times fast.
Right, exactly. But it helps to settle down deep trauma.
Okay.
So I was very fascinated at the way the brains were working with people who were just coming off of heroin and opioids.
Right.
Slow processing. I'd have to do some different techniques. So I really wanted to go and research what is working and what is not working.
Right.
So I decided to do a comparison against the USA and the European Union. What's working over there that's not working over here, because we have over 115 deaths a day
It's crazy.
that are heroin.
Nationwide.
Yes.
In
that are,
the U.S.
in the U.S.
115 a day.
Huge issue on the
That's
East Coast.
that's bad. That's really, really bad. I mean,
an
that's
epidemic.
a total epidemic.
It is truly an epidemic, and
Yeah.
it's sad to see the people who are getting caught up in this, because a lot of people, what happens is they end up having pain issues. They go to their doctors.
Right.
They trust their doctors. Doctors give them something
Pain medication.
opioid based.
Yes.
Exactly. And then
Percocets and Vicodin and
right.
along those lines, those types of medications.
Yes. There's so many out
There's
there
so
right now.
so many opiates.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, and even though they're starting to have some sort of government lockdown on it
Like a
because
regulation.
of the epidemic, it's still being prescribed. And then the whole thing is people do not realize how potent these medications are. They start taking them, and some people have a horrible reaction to them, say, I never want to take that
Right.
again. Some people are just like, oh, I have no pain. This is wonderful.
Yes.
Give me more. And all of a sudden,
They
the-
develop a dependency.
they do. The brain starts going through actual physical changes.
I need this. Yeah.
And a tolerance is
Yeah.
developed as well, right? Which
Yes.
would increase the amount the need to take to get the feeling.
Yep, but the more that the doctor keeps giving you,
Yeah, sure.
Or people start going doctor shopping.
Right.
Or if they can't do that, then they get a black market. Then they can find it on the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the streets, or from a dealer or something like that. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, then all of a sudden, geez, let's go to heroin. This is cheaper. This is easier to
Right.
obtain. So you have a really multi-level issue here that started off with just, well, I went skiing and I had a bad accident
Right.
and my knee's all messed up now. And now I'm doing, my life is revolving
Right.
around trying to take care of my pain issues.
Right.
What do you do? It's really scary.
And it's not like they just suddenly just think, well, I want heroin now.
No.
It's their brain is now, when they've developed that addiction towards the opiates in a pill form, through a doctor, if they can't get it or their doctor cuts them off or anything like that, their thinking takes them in the direction of, well, I got to have something.
Right.
I've got to have something to alleviate the pain. And it suddenly, I've seen it time and time again. I used to be a case manager on the front lines, and I'd watch. The guy never had any addiction issues. He just had a really bad back because due to an accident. And the next thing you know, he went from pill addiction to full-blown heroin addict.
Wow.
Full-blown heroin addict. A guy who probably would have never been or become a heroin addict. As many do become drug addicts due to psychological issues and bad upbringing or things like that. And this guy, it was solely through his pain
Right.
that he went down that path.
Exactly.
Mind you, he's sober now 6 years and he's doing really
Wow,
good.
that's
That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's good. There is hope
Yes.
for recovery. I agree, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to dig deep into this. Is they're having quite a bit of success in Portugal, which is a very
I heard this.
small
Interesting.
I heard
country.
this.
Right. Most people are like, where's Portugal? It's
Yeah.
right next to Spain.
Yeah.
But what had happened was in the late 1990s, after their revolution in 1974, they were sending young men off to fight their wars in Northern Africa.
Right.
The young men were coming back traumatized, and they had gotten into heroin use when they were down there.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they had this full-blown addiction in the 90s.
Right.
Multiple people dying, and HIV and AIDS was just, exponential. So what they decided to do, instead of penalizing people for it, was they decriminalized it.
Right.
So anybody can have 10 days or less of whatever drug it is on them. But if they get
Interesting.
caught with it, they get put into this diversion program.
Okay.
So they go see a social worker, a judge, and a doctor.
Right.
So they decide, does this person
What kind
need
of a doctor?
treatment? It's a medical doctor.
Okay, medical.
Yeah, so they decide, okay, do you have an addiction problem here? Do you have a psychological issue?
Right.
Where is this stemming from that we can help you?
They're getting treatment.
Exactly, versus sitting there and saying, shaming the person
Right.
and saying you've got a problem
Right.
and you're the issue here and you're a bad person, which we know is not the case.
It's never the
Yeah.
case.
It isn't.
They're never bad.
No.
They're not bad people. They
They're
just
not.
So I have a question for you about this too. Sorry to interrupt there. Does this have anything to do with the healthcare system in Portugal? Do they have free healthcare? Is it paid healthcare? Is it something similar to what's in the United States?
No, it's socialized medicine.
Socialized
Yes,
medicine. So
yes,
is
which,
that
which it is in most of Europe. They
okay?
have a different healthcare system over there.
So do you think something like that, if we had a healthcare system like that, would work here in the States?
Possibly, but I really think, early on here, I really think that if they had more sites for people to go and get help, more rehabilitation centers, more centers like for methadone. Now, I've been doing some research on methadone and Suboxone.
right.
Well, with methadone, they have to go in on a daily basis. But I was reading there is an appallingly small number of those centers in this country, especially in rural areas.
Right.
Now, this is really gripping rural areas.
Right.
Small towns that you would never think that they would have any type of addiction issue. But it's taking over some of these small towns.
It's there. Yep. I've had clients from Maine and Delaware and states where we don't really know if they have a large population, but It's run rampant, and it's all throughout our nation, in every state,
Right.
in every single state, in a lot of those small rural towns.
Yes, I had many clients from Ohio and Kentucky and
Yeah.
Tennessee, and again, we have this. I still think that we have this perception in this country of like the perception of the 1960s. What was the heroin users like back then?
Yes.
They were. It was very suburban. It was very, or I should say, it's very big
City-like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
New York City, Chicago, LA. It only hit
Which
the
back
big
then
cities.
it really was that
It
way.
was, exactly.
It's nothing like that now.
Exactly.
I mean, they're
It
still
isn't.
in the cities too,
Yes, there's still elements of it,
but they're all over.
it is all over
Yeah.
the place, and it's not being discriminatory on any cultural
Right.
class at all.
Not at all. It does not discriminate.
isn't.
Now, you were saying, as far as Portugal, by decriminalizing and assisting with rehabilitation, what happened in Portugal? What? Because I remember reading an article about this, and I was highly impressed. And somebody said they need to do this in the U.S. What happened? What was there? I believe it wasn't an epidemic anymore. There, correct?
Yes, it wasn't. What happened was the rates of overdoses decreased. The rates of AIDS and HIV decreased because there was
Amazing.
no longer sharing of needles.
Right.
Right.
So they basically, I mean, they call them shooting galleries. I believe that
Yes.
they provide a space for somebody to be able to have a clean needle if they're still
Yes.
actively using, rather than sharing together and people dying more.
Right, and they call them using rooms.
Right, right.
So it's in a controlled environment because what they figured too was that a lot of the users were using at home, or they were using in areas
In a
where they
private
could be
area.
by themselves,
Yes.
because in a use and they would be under the influence and they wouldn't want to do much afterwards. So I think it's a much more humanistic way of dealing with this issue, because we
Yeah.
can't sit there and hide our heads to that this problem doesn't exist at
Yeah,
all. Because
the
it
reality
does.
is it does. Yes, it does. Very much.
Yes.
Very much.
So that's fascinating. I want to open this up to our audience as well. If you have any questions, comments about heroin use, opioids, if you're personally struggling, if you have a loved one that's struggling, now's your chance to chat with two experts. So if you have any
I'm no
questions,
expert.
let
I'm
us
learning
know.
from her.
Hey, we all learn from each other.
Yes.
So that's fascinating about Portugal, and I love to see that it's making an impact.
Yes.
Have you noticed any other trends in other countries?
Germany.
Okay. What's Germany doing?
Germany is doing about the same sort of scenario as Portugal
Okay.
is, but Portugal was really the forerunner in all of this, what's called a harm reduction program,
Okay.
because they're like I said, they're being humanistic towards users, which we all should be.
Right.
Yeah, it's difficult. They're suffering.
Now, there's
Yeah.
something that's really interesting that I've noticed in the last couple of months and years here in California. So there used to be a time that if you were on the street and you had meth or heroin in your pocket or in your car, you would definitely be going to jail. More recently, I've talked to an officer who told me that if you're in possession of heroin or meth in California these days, due to a couple of laws that were passed, it's not even a slap on the wrists. You don't even get arrested for it.
Interesting.
It's if you get caught selling it. So in a sense,
Right.
it is decriminalizing it, I believe, to a certain extent. I mean, also
Is it because there's not enough room?
in jails,
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely why. There's a lot of
Right.
people whose
Yeah.
whose crimes are getting reduced.
Yeah.
Or, obviously, if you're going to be selling drugs, that's a whole different story.
Sure.
Then you are facing criminal charges. But if
Now that's just out here in California.
I mean, as far as and I see like the nation is somehow starting to morph and maybe morphing into that direction, hopefully. But the problem that still lies within all of this is healthcare.
Sure.
We need, as she was saying, we need rehabilitation and places where that could, recenter a person or actually help a person go in the right direction, redirect them in their lifestyle, in their thinking, and show them true recovery. And unfortunately, we have a lot of treatment centers, but are they really getting the type of treatment that they need?
Right.
So it's few and far between. Not to judge anybody, I've worked in many of the best centers that a lot of people will criticize them for being a certain way, but I've worked among some of the best professionals. best professionals in the field in case management and therapy and all of these different types of various positions that they do provide excellent treatment. But healthcare, as far as healthcare, and we could talk about this for days when it comes to political. What are they going to do next? What's going to happen next? Everybody's kind of on the fence and just kind of waiting to see what the government officials are going to do with healthcare, and we don't really know.
Right.
It's a big fat question mark. Like, what's going to happen?
Right, and I don't want to get political on this
Me
either,
neither.
but
Yeah.
but there was a statement made by President Trump about we have an opioid epidemic, and I did follow this up. Was there any money that they came into the system? No. That was it. He just got up and he made that statement, and that was it. One of the things that I found interesting, and this is like kind of the dirty underside of all of this, is the pharmaceutical companies, their responsibility on this whole situation. Now, there have been several states that have sued probably about a dozen pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
The pharmaceutical companies have paid out, but if you're making billions or trillions of dollars a year, it's just
chump change
It
for
is
them.
chump
It's
change,
nothing to them,
exactly.
yeah.
So and then
A friend of
they
mine
were-
made a good point, though. He said more recently that politicians might start passing laws, and maybe even some of the pharmaceutical companies will take more responsibility once some of their own kids are affected by this.
Right.
Which it's very likely that's
I'm sure
happened.
some already have, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it could happen more and more because
Definitely,
really
as
it's
it
way out
continues
of
or
to
it can
spread.
happen to some of them too.
to some of them themselves.
Exactly. It's like you never know when you're going to be getting injured and having to have some kind of pain medication.
Right.
Now, one of the things I think is really important on the preventative side is to have the physician or physician's assistant really talk to somebody about, we need to put you on this medication, but we're only going to give you like 3 to 7 days supply. That's
Right,
it. And then we're
right.
going to
Wean them
monitor
off.
this.
Yeah.
Wean them off.
None
because
of
it
this
only-
long-term-
It is not
Yeah.
long-term. And,
Yeah.
and more studies are showing that actual long-term opioid use really actually increases your pain. It doesn't help to decrease it, but by
Right.
that time, you're mentally
We're
fixated
like-minded.
that you needed it.
We see eye to eye on this. Totally. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. It just gets worse. It gets worse the longer it is. Yep.
So it's really multifaceted. It's, having that education up front. One of the things that I'm trying to explain to people is that if you're going in, you have a pain issue, you ask the questions. Do the research beforehand, because there's so much research on the internet right
Yeah.
now. Go and be an informed customer,
Right.
because that's what you are. You're a customer along the whole chain of healthcare. Go and ask those questions.
Right.
Make sure if you get an answer that you're not satisfied with or you're uncomfortable with, go and advocate for yourself or have somebody advocate for you. Make
Right.
sure that you yourself are monitoring your use on this.
Right.
Because if you feel yourself starting to go, oh, this feels really good and I could take some more of this, because I mean, all of us have addiction
Right. We can get addicted to
problems.
anything.
I
Yeah.
mean, exactly. You
Phones,
get, exactly.
food, many
Yeah,
things.
yesterday for me was
Caffeine.
desserts. and caffeine, exactly.
You and me both.
It was-
Caffeine affects many of us,
Oh,
yeah.
you and me both.
So,
You
Well,
just-
we have a user question here I'd love to address as well. This is a great question. Thank you, Mohammed. What do you think about the health education, including drugs and alcohol use in schools? So, of course, there's programs like DARE and different education awareness programs. What are your thoughts on what's currently being put out there in schools, and how can it be improved?
I mean, I can speak on that. As far as right now, I have a friend. He's got a organization here in Orange County called Stop Before You Start.
oh, nice.
My aunt on the East Coast has a nonprofit organization called Arise and Flourish. So I love the fact that, and I've gotten an opportunity to be on both sides of the coast. When I go to the East Coast, she takes me to Maryland and to D.C. and to Virginia, and we go talk in high schools and junior high
great.
schools. Out here, what Danny Murphy, and we'll have him on the show soon, what he does is the same thing. They educate. They go and talk in schools. On the West Coast, it's more about personal experience. He gets a lot of people that are in recovery to go and talk to the kids, and not to go and say, look, don't do drugs, but more like, this is what we did, this is what happened to us, and this is what we would hope you would prevent
I think
yourself
that
from
would
doing.
be more effective. You
No,
know,
no,
not
on the East Coast,
Okay.
I at first was kind of like thinking maybe not, but I sat and I watched a couple of the people that my aunt actually has come and talk, and they on a blackboard they talk about the brain and how they break it down really cool, but like in a way to where it's more entertaining and kids are more
Sure.
like in tune to it and more interested rather than Fort Knox or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah.
so in that moment, they break it down and they talk about what happens to you, how you get tempted, what you end up doing, where it goes, and how your life goes into this downward spiral. So that was really cool. So educationally, there's never too much information. You know, we should always be educated. And I love what you were saying too. Advocate for yourself or learn or find out from people that have a wealth of knowledge and know about this stuff. And it's never, we should always be learning. It's never too late, and it should always,
Absolutely.
there should be more and more. Even Alcoholics Anonymous has been talking about in general service that they want to start educating people about Alcoholics Anonymous, which is, I mean, although it's an anonymous program, they know that there's kids in school that are out drinking.
Sure.
They know that there's kids in school that are drinking excessively, so at least make them aware of the program so that if something does happen and they do need to get help, they know where to turn, because I didn't know about 12-step programs when I was in high school, nor did I really think that I would ever need to go to something like that. But if there is that awareness that these types of places are there to teach you about alcoholism or addiction, why not?
And that is a great segue into the second part of this question. At what age? What age should you start talking
What do
about
you
this
think?
stuff?
I think the earlier the better.
Yes.
It depends on family history too. Because if there's
absolutely.
family history,
Right.
and
I mean, you work
can-
with kids as low as 5 years of age.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they're exposed to things and they see
course,
things, right?
Of course.
So
Yeah,
the younger the better.
Right, exactly. And I've worked with little ones who were in the foster system, and
Right.
were telling me about their parents' drug use. You know, I had a 6-year-old that was sitting there and telling me extensively about the way that her parents used to use.
Right.
So they're
Foster
they're already
system.
exposed
Right.
by
And were
that
telling
time.
me about their
You know,
parents'
I
drug
think
use.
With that,
You know,
with
I had a
that,
6-year-old that was sitting there and
clientele,
telling me
you really need to start,
extensively
let's
about
talk
the way
this.
that
How
her
did it
parents used to
affect you?
use.
What do you
Right.
think?
So they're
Foster
systems.
systems.
Right. Were telling me about their parents' drug use.
You
know, I had a 6-year-old
that was That makes sense.
before
Yeah.
junior
telling me
high
extensively
junior high
about
think
the way that
how
her
did it
parents used to
affect you?
use.
What,
So they're foster systems.
Yeah.
Were telling me about their
That's
parents'
when you become
junior high
curious.
trauma.
You
Exactly.
become curious.
or bullying, and you know.
Bullying, drug,
Yeah.
just curiosity, all that. So definitely, I mean, I was in junior high school and high school when we had certain people that would come in and talk to us, and
Oh,
I think I was in
remember
5th
that.
grade when DARE started.
Yes.
And I was 10 in 5th grade. So
Yeah.
I think that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think there's been around a lot longer than when you were in the 5th grade, my friend.
Well, I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has, but
That's when
that's
you.
when I
That's
went
when
to
you
it.
learned about it.
That's when I learned
Okay,
about
when
it.
you
yeah.
started, when it started in your
Right.
school. Okay,
Right.
I thought you meant like when they just started.
No. That's when it started
too,
for
like-
me. As
There
yeah.
used to be MAD too, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers.
Oh, right.
way back
Sure.
then. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think prevention is really, we need to be doing more of that in this country.
Much more.
Yeah.
Much more.
Yeah. And there doesn't, the funding doesn't seem to really be there. I mean, I was looking at the numbers,
Yeah.
and they want to do more on the rehabilitation side
Right.
versus,
The
in the
awareness
front
side.
side. Exactly. I don't understand
Yeah.
that. I mean, you're putting lives at danger by not educating people. This is what could happen to you.
Right.
Because I think in this country we have such a subconscious need that, okay, we have pain, we shouldn't have pain, and let's pop a pill for it, like that. I
Right.
mean, it's an automatic thought. We have all been brainwashed into that sort of thinking in this country, and
Right.
it's really detrimental. I think it's just, we need to also teach people to pain tolerance. What can you do instead of popping a pill?
Right.
How about some stretching? How about some walking? How about meditation? Or things that are going to be good for you that you're going to learn how to take your pain level down by
Right.
yourself. This
Yo-
is an
yoga, things like
incredible
that.
machine
Yeah.
here. We should
Awesome.
be teaching people to strengthen this and
Absolutely.
not pop a pill.
I 100% agree with that. I think that's amazing. So, action. What do we do now?
Prevention.
Julie-Ann Goode for president. She's president tomorrow.
You have my vote.
What are you gonna do? What's the first thing that you implement? What's the solution?
I would really like to see more of a harm reduction program.
Okay.
And I agree that I'm going to add this in just really quick. Last week I saw a news story that they were going to have a needle exchange program, I think in Santa Ana.
Right.
And Santa Ana and
Shut it
Anaheim, they shut it down. They said, "Oh
Wow.
no, this is going to be contributing to more drug use." And I'm like going, "Oh no."
They just don't get it.
They don't get it.
Yeah.
So I would really like to see the education through a better education through the medical system, definitely the doctors who are prescribing, to have more of a talk to your patient a few more minutes.
Right.
Let them know exactly what could end up happening on here, and have some sort of monitoring up front if you have to have something.
Right.
But get that into their heads. This is only going to be short term. We need to do something else.
Right.
You know, especially if it's going to be long term pain.
Right.
We need to be dealing with people who use like the 18 to 35 segment differently than the 40 to 75 segment.
Right.
Different health issues, different ways of living life. There's not enough research that's gone on that. I've read a lot about that, and it's true. I mean, there's different challenges with both groups,
Right.
and between men and women. They process out differently. So more specialized treatment as to exactly what is working and what is not working, and realizing that there are going to be relapses.
Absolutely.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
So we're running a little low on time. I want to open this up for any final questions. If you have any, leave them in the comments. We'll get to them as soon as we can. If not during live, we'll get to them afterwards. Is there any other things that you wanted to touch upon on this topic?
I think we're good for today.
I think we're
This
good.
was a great show.
Awesome.
Did you want to
Julie-Ann?
talk about?
Yeah, tell us more about where people can get in touch with you, what you got going on, different shows or websites or anything you got going on that people can find out more.
Okay. Well, and that's going to be at the end of the podcast also. If you want to contact me, my contact information is going to be at the end. I do see people in my office now. I'm starting to get on insurance panels, so that's it, but I'm going to be seeing a lot of Medi-Cal, Medicaid people.
This is
because-
great.
Yeah.
I'm going to get your card after this.
Thank you. And so my contact information will be on there. And also, I have 3 other shows that are on this channel, therapycable.com. It is Psych 101, which were my podcasts from 2013 to 2016, 2017. There are over 100 shows on there on various topics, including a lot of addiction shows. Then Psyched, and my new my new show is Psych Planet. So
Nice.
the first show
It's
just
great.
came out.
Check it out.
Psyched.
Austin's
Proud to be a
great.
part of it. Awesome. Well,
And thank you, Pej.
Oh, thank you. It was
so I
a pleasure.
just want to check here. Any final comments? Think we're all set? All right. Thank you again, Julie-Ann. Until next time.